Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. This is Micro Scalp Clinic. I'm here to talk about how to give a natural hairline as possible. And this is a technique I use. As you can see, I draw with a white marker, obviously the hairline, but you can see some lines coming out. And what I do is I do my micropigmentation around those lines. I do not try and touch the lines. Sometimes I'm on the edge, for example, as you can see, but I try not to go over the lines. So why do I do that? The main reason is because I want to make it look as natural as possible. And these lines actually really help make your hairline look, as natural as it gets. Because everyone that looks at her hairline, it's not always smooth. It's not always like a straight line. There's uneven parts. The whole point of life. You got to have imperfections rather than perfections. And what you do is, have it look like there are imperfections in it, and that makes it look natural. And once I'm done with this, what I do is I get a lower grade of the ink, and I use a new nude needle, and I just fill up the blanks with a lower ink color, and that gives it a perfectly natural look. Because if you look at your hairline, if you look at your actual hair, sometimes your hair is thick, sometimes your hair is thin. Not every hair follicle is the same size. Sometimes they're thick ones, sometimes there's big ones, sometimes they're small ones. And that's how you make it look natural, guys. Don't believe in anyone that uses the same method. They use, the same ink throughout. Don't believe in that. If anyone are, if you're looking for a scalp micropigmentation guy, just ask him about what needles you use, what size you use, what colors you use. If it's the same throughout, then that person doesn't really know much, or they're not that experienced. Because if you're really experienced, then you would know that your hairline is never even. There's imperfections in it. And also you would know that your hair follicles are never even. There's big and small. So if they're not saying these things, then you know that they're not very experienced, and they'll probably not do a good job. So you need to ask the right questions, guys. You need to ask the right you need to know exactly how it works around here. I mean look, I've just rubbed off the ink now, and look how natural it looks. Can you see? There are ridges in there, but that's all part of the game. It makes it look natural. Now I just fill up the blanks with a small, with a smaller needle, and obviously kind of a lighter tone, and you can see how natural it looks now. Can you see? That's how you do it, guys. That's how you do it. And if they're not doing something like this, then these guys are not professional enough or know what they're doing. So you might be asking to yourselves, why does he have a massive Y in the front of his head? Why did I draw a Y? Well, that's not done by accident. If you notice closely, he's got a scar in his forehead. So what I don't want to do is do scalp micropigmentation over his scar, because the scar tissue itself is different from your scalp tissue. It's a lot more thicker, and the cells are thicker, and there needs to be a lot more work. So you cannot treat the scar tissue the same way you would treat your scalp. So this is why I've drawn over the scar, you see. So I don't want to basically put needles into his scar. So I'm going to be working around his scar basically, and that's the only way to do it, because if you start putting needles into the scar itself, it's going to come out looking very bad, guys. You're not going to get the same results. Sometimes it looks blotchy, or sometimes it looks messy, and it just doesn't match with the rest of the skin, and you're going to probably end up making it look worse. So it's best to just leave it and work around it, work around the scar, you know, and that's how you get the best results. You just try and blend it in, and that's the only way to do it, guys. Because if you start drawing into the scar, you're just going to make it look much worse than it is. So this is the only reason why I've done that. So as you can see, I mean, you can see from the end result, it'll come out looking very good. And the techniques I use, can you see with my 2 fingers, I'm stretching the skin. I'm also stretching the scar area as well. And that gives me, you know, the best surface to put the needles in. Because once you stretch the skin, the scalp, you manage to be able to get a really good result. And also, as you can see, I'm starting from the edge. So I'm starting from the edge of the forehead, and I'm working my way in basically. My needles are at 90 degrees from the head, and these are, you know, very quick jabs to the skin. And I'm using it like a triangular method as well. So I'm basically putting triangles on his head, and that's, you know, that's why it looks very fast. But you know, that's what I'm doing, putting basically triangles and working my way from the, you know, hairline all the way to the middle of his head. So yeah, a lot of concentrations are needed, and that's what you need, a lot of concentrations. And you sometimes take breaks every hour or two. Sometimes you need to give your eyes a rest as well, and you need to give the customer a rest as well. Sometimes, you know, you're basically using a needle, and you know, it hurts. So you got to give them a bit of a rest as well, and give time for the customer to regroup, and you know, re-energize, get some water and stuff, and then start the session again. But yeah, I hope that helps, guys. Hope that helps, and yeah, so I'll see you guys shortly. Take care for now. Bye bye.